The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Arcane Wonders, game toppers, finishing second place when you're looking for a job, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and occasionally role-playing games. Today, Abby and Alex break down escape room games, unlock and exit, and give you pros and cons of both systems. Then the Dukes review Marvel Champions from Fantasy Flight Games. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And you're missing an also. Anyway, this is episode 213, which just threw me off a little, is all I'm saying, Alex. Episode 213, Decklist of Champions, that title provided by Matthew S. over from our Board Game Geek Guild. A fantastic title, kind of a little play on the Kurt Vonnegut novel, Breakfast of Champions. Of course, we're talking about a Marvel game, Marvel Champions, and you build decks. Well, some people build decks. I don't know if you built decks, Alex. That'll be a question we'll get to in the review.
Oh, we'll talk about it.
I'm sure we will. So good job, Matthew S. We get all of our help naming our episodes over our Board Game Geek Guild number 2008. We also talk about upcoming games for the podcast, so go check that out. And we'll give you the rest of the runners-up at the end of the episode. Alex, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. It's a lovely Saturday. I had a heck of a night last night where I was over at Abby's friend's mom's place, teaching them. They'd just gotten a copy of Wingspan, so we played through a game of Wingspan, and then we played through a game of The Mind. On the first round of The Mind, Abby's friend's mom, we each got the one card that you get in The Mind, and we're all looking at each other, getting ready to play. And she says just one word, rhymes with wussies, when no one was playing a card. And I just absolutely lost it. Also had a lot of champagne, but I wasn't so hungover that I couldn't go to a workout this morning. So all in all, I'm feeling pretty good. How about you?
Were you celebrating something? Is that what you said?
No, wasn't. No, just happened to be over at just teaching a game. They had wanted. She is a birder. She's into birding, and so wanted someone to teach her the game, and it's one of Abby's favorite games.
No, it was just it was the champagne threw me off.
Oh no, they just happen to have champagne.
Yeah, like casual champagne drinkers are like few and far between. It's usually a celebratory thing.
Look, man, I didn't choose the drinks. It just happened to be there was a champagne bottle open, and I had about half of it.
Okay, fair enough.
So that was last night into today, but overall, not terrible. I sort of hinted at the top of the show. I am the silver medalist for a job that would have ended the job search. I was pretty convinced the job search was coming to an end, and then reality came crushing down on my head. The person who got the job, by the way, is a listener of the Dukes of Dice and is a very cool guy. So I'm not going to dwell on it too much, Sean. But it was a damper. It was a damper when it happened. Not this last week, but the week before. So anyway.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Alex.
Yeah, me too. Abby is sorry to hear that too, because she's getting sick of me, not having a job. So,
is she calling you a bum?
Not yet. No, it hasn't advanced to that point. It's just little subtle. It's just subtle little digs every now and then. Just little things. Nothing big. Yeah. Anyway, how are you, Sean?
I'm good. I was telling you before we started recording, I've been in marketing hell for the law firm the last 10 days or so. Which is fun. But yeah, I just got back from getting a haircut. How's my hair look, Alex?
Looks sharp. Not as good as mine, but look good.
Alex, that's just sad. You're a sad little man, Alex.
I'm not that little.
Well, yeah. You are after this last 30-day challenge you did.
Or are we doing a Dukes of Diet update?
Sure. Well, I was just going to say, I went out to get my haircut with my grandfather, who just turned 90 a week ago. 90
congrats.
Years old. He gets around great. And we had some breakfast. And then I went to go see my mom, who's a pharmacist, and she gave me a flu shot, and she enjoyed it too much. So let's see if I start feeling the ill effects, although she's like, that's a myth. And I'm like, is it? Is it, though? Yeah, but diet's going good. I am down about 3 pounds, a little over 3 pounds from last episode. I'm at 260. What was it this morning? 262.8, I think. Yeah, 262.8. So that puts me at about 52 pounds overall.
Okay.
I think I was just at like 49 last episode. So yeah, doing good. It definitely gets harder as you have less to lose, although trust me, I still got plenty to lose. But yeah, it's going good. And you're still working out, Alex, and staying nice and fit.
CrossFit, man. Got to keep up with the CrossFit. It's been like 4 times a week, and I finally feel like I'm back in CrossFit shape. I'd taken enough time off of it that when I started getting back into it, I was both heavier than I'd ever been and more out of shape than I think I'd ever been. So that combo of things was not good. And now lately it feels like I'm killing it. So
yeah,
I'm feeling pretty good about it. Yeah, and gotta get ready because I'm in a couple weeks. I will be on a cruise. I will be in the Caribbean with Abby and her family. Should be a lovely time. I need a vacation from my unemployment, apparently.
Yeah, get those abs tight, Alex.
That's right. That's all I got right now, Sean. I don't have a job, but I have sick abs.
Let me say this: what I realized, Raquel and I were talking, because I put on a shirt the other day. It's this green shirt that I have, and I saw a picture from the month before I started, so May, because I started in June, and I was like completely filling out this polo shirt, like sideways, front. It kind of looked like a snowman, where I just had like a round head, a round torso. Anyway, it was pretty amazing. And then we realized I've lost a Chewy. So,
okay.
Chewy's about 60 pounds, and I'm almost at 60 pounds. It's like I was constantly carrying around Chewy, which would explain why I was exhausted all the time and my back hurt. And yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's enough of that.
Want to talk quick scheduling thing because we have Thanksgiving coming up, and I mentioned going on the cruise. So normally we post a Dukes on Deck every other week. There, you will see one coming up this next week. The episode will release on its normal schedule, I think is the plan right now, Sean.
Correct.
But this will be a top 6 episode with a double take associated. You'll see that. Post to it. Just don't be surprised when you see that coming up alongside the episode a week earlier than typical. The episode scheduling should still be about the same. We anticipate that top 6 episode, and then right after that, Football Highlights 2052. First mention. Is likely going to be the review after that. Did you get that in?
I was going to point out I did. Yeah, that just came in yesterday. In fact, Raquel forgot to mention that it came in. Usually she's out working in the garage, and it came in, and she left it in the garage. And then late last night, she's like, "Oh, by the way, this came in." I was like, "Oh, we totally could have played this."
Yeah, it's fine. You got time. I got time. And then one other thing I was going to do is I was going to plug Lasers and Feelings. I mentioned playing this on the last episode, GMing this. I think the first episode and possibly the second, I think just the first right now, is live on the Boards Alive stream. So if you want to hear me try my hand at DMing, again, fair warning, it's a bit raunchier than what's typically on the Dukes podcast feed. But yeah, give it a listen. I think it came out pretty well. And yeah, excited to hear what folks think about it. So if you're looking for a link to that, I posted one on the Dukes of Dice Guild.
And I think we've retweeted it too, so you can find it on our Twitter.
True. Yeah, that's all I got as far as plugs and scheduling stuff, Sean.
Cool. Well, let's talk about what we've been playing. Oh, wait. I'm not going to do that.
And I'm sort of only going to be the one doing that. Yeah, basically with the 2 episode recordings back to back, because even though the episode will release on its normal schedule, we're going to record it a week earlier. Sean, you wanted to save up some fresh recent plays for next week.
I will say this: I have played a ton of Marvel Champions for the review. Also played another game of 18 Mechs, which was killer. Yeah, so
Marvel Champions has definitely co-opted my life. I've played a good amount of Wingspan of late. And then, of course, the games that you're about to hear on this segment, which is Abby and myself sitting on the couch breaking down 2 different game systems, the Exit game system and the Unlock system. So here that is. All right, a little pre-recorded segment and a reappearance by the always reluctant but wonderful, beautiful, fantastic Abby, my girlfriend. There's a comma there because some folks were upset when I did the full thing. So
right,
yeah,
that's fine. I'll take a comma. I'm fine with a comma.
Okay, you were fine without a comma too.
I was also fine without a comma.
So the reason I brought you on is we have played a couple of games of late and numerous versions of the same game. Exit the Game, as well as the Unlock series. The Exit the Game series we played a lot more of. We played a lot earlier, and then just recently we got more into Unlock. And these are types of games that I figured you would like because you tend to like puzzles. You came to gaming enjoying puzzles. Cooperative games tend to be your jam. Both of these you've enjoyed, it seems, to one degree or another. Is it the puzzle factor, or is it other things?
I think it's the puzzle factor on top of the cooperative factor. Like, it's us working together to solve a problem instead of me versus you. So there is no, you're going to be better at this than me or anything like that. Like, it's us being good together, and then more of a puzzle and less of a competition.
Yeah. It was also your first time dealing with any sort of escape room type of game. And it was also your first time dealing with a destructible game when we're talking about Exit. And we'll talk about some of the pros and cons here, sort of break it down. Did you have any expectations coming into this type of game? When I first told you what this might be, were you concerned, worried? Did you think it would be something you'd like? What was the feeling ahead of time?
I don't think I had any sort of expectations, but generally whenever I go to play a new game with you, like, I expect you to lead me through the play experience. And so with Exit, I felt like that definitely happened. Unlock, I think we both sort of tripped and fell our way through that one, which was definitely a different experience than I'm used to.
So let's talk differences between the system. The biggest top-level difference. So for folks who don't know, and I didn't really break this down in full, both of these games are games where you are trying to solve a series of puzzles and do it in a certain amount of time. They're reminiscent of escape rooms, but they're meant to be kind of an escape room in a box. Exit the Game was widely praised. It won the Kennerspiel this Jahr a couple of years back. Unlock came out about the same time as a competitor. One of the chief differences between the two is when you play through Exit the Game, you're going to do all sorts of things, like taking scissors to cards, like folding things, lighting candles, all sorts of random stuff. And obviously, we don't want to give any spoilers away about specific things. But it's meant to be a one-and-done experience. You play it once with one group, and you throw it away. And Unlock is a little bit different in that it is app-supported, so there's an app that helps manage and run the game. And then it's also a little bit different in that it is reusable. You can, after you're done with an Unlock game, give it to a friend, give it to someone else, and have them play again. It's not replayable for you, right? You already know the puzzles, you already know the answers, but you can pass it along to someone else. On that front, on the permanence factor, did you mind the fact that Exit the Game is one and done? You certainly like having the shelf space.
Yeah, I like that it's not on our shelf. For those who've never been in our home, which is everyone, I'm assuming, all of the board games are in our dining room. So Alex is like, let's stuff the shelf. And I'm a little bit more like, maybe we could make this look a little artistic and lovely and beautiful because it's the thing you see right when you walk into our house. So I'm cool with getting a game experience and then it leaves the shelf. But it also feels like ever so slightly wasteful, which I do appreciate the Unlock that we can pass that along to someone else. It still gets off of our shelf and just onto someone else's shelf.
Let's talk experience. The big difference, too, that I sort of hinted at a little bit with Unlock is app-assisted. There's an app that helps manage. It serves as a timer. It serves as a way to enter codes. It serves as another way to enter in puzzles. Whereas in Exit the Game, it's all in the box. And it's very efficient in how they use it. Literally every part of that thing is in play. Could be used, could be a part of it. They don't waste anything in those Exit games. And for the sheer number of different experiences, we played good 9 or 10 of those at this point, right? They always find some creative, different way of using components that we haven't seen before game to game. In terms of that experience of that app-connected versus kind of pure, raw, is that a substantive difference for you? Is that something that affects how you like to play? Does Unlock use the app well enough for it to be worthwhile?
So I think when we first played our first Unlock, I was much more into Exit. I liked the physical nature of all of the games. I felt like Detective used an app and sort of technology really interestingly. but I wasn't super sure how it worked with Unlock. As like we progressed with more clues, and they sort of have these like magic viewing ways you can put the app on a card and see things, and these tools built in, it seemed a little bit more intuitive and also a little bit more fun. So I'm kind of impartial. I think both serve a purpose. I like that Exit sort of forces you to put technology down and just be present and play the game. But Unlock does it really well with the app.
The solution to a puzzle, it is unequivocal.
Yep.
There is no doubt in most cases that you have found the solution because of the way the system works. There's a wheel that comes in there that's sort of a decoder wheel. I'm trying to solve this plus sign puzzle, and I'm going to put in a code of 923, and that's somehow the answer to this. That brings me to a card number 15, out of a deck of usually 30 cards. Card 15 says, are you trying to solve this puzzle? If so, go to this card. It is almost impossible, I think, the way it's set up, to stumble your way into a correct answer, or to skip ahead content. And what we found with our very first play of Unlock, now, a good part of this was on us. We weren't observant.
Yep.
We were not paying close enough attention. But we skipped through like 4 or 5 puzzles accidentally and were unbelievably confused. And even in our second and third plays of that system in different modules, there were always moments, it felt like, of, did we do this right? Are we on the right track? And even when we were doing everything perfectly correctly, it wasn't always supremely obvious that we were doing things perfectly correctly. Now, some people might find that a benefit, right? That it's a puzzle and you feel clever when you found this sort of outside of the box solution. When it comes to puzzles of these different games, how would you characterize the difference between the two, and which ones tended to be more engaging or interesting to you?
So I like Exit, like thematically and just general, the puzzles. The rule book sort of starts out with a little backstory, like you've been trapped on a polar island, or you're on vacation and you're in this haunted castle or whatever. And all of the puzzles follow this theme, and you're trying to escape or get out of or succeed in saving someone or whatever the theme is. All of the Unlock ones were, each one was radically different from the next, and it was weird, like video games or Alice in Wonderland, and it was almost like, I don't know. It didn't work as well for me. It didn't draw me in. It didn't make me feel like the puzzles I was solving in the game had anything to do with the content. Whereas there's been a lot of instances of interesting things with Exit where what you're trying to do feels really closely to, like, in this made-up situation, what you might actually do.
With Exit 2, because of the fact that they don't mind having these puzzles that are destructible, it opens the door for a lot more interesting use of components. You never know what you're going to find inside of a box with Exit. Whereas Unlock, it is going to be a deck of cards, and the interesting different implementations are in how the app implements things. There's still some cool efficiencies and cool puzzles using card backs. The Alice in Wonderland one, without talking specifics, had some really interesting puzzles. I think that was easily my favorite of the 3 that we played. And even the Sherlock Holmes one, you had some great opportunities to feel clever, even if there were some moments of frustration that were tied into that. But it's interesting. It's sort of it's a quality question almost, right? Because again, you have that benefit. Like, we can take Unlock now and give it as a gift to a friend, and we plan on doing so this weekend. Exit, not so much. It's an experience you can share with friends, but that's about as far as it goes. But the quality of the experience, at least from the handful of Unlocks versus the Exit I've played, I've very rarely had a really bad experience with Exit, and the diversity of puzzles that they have in there often prove really fascinating.
Yes. I think, honestly, the only reason I pick Exit 2 might just be how many Exits we've played versus Unlock. And the very first Unlock we played, I think I really struggled because I kept viewing it as an Exit, where it's its own game with its own rules and its own ideas of how you solve these puzzles. So certainly that is not something that you can be like, they're the same style of game, so they're going to be played in the same way. It's definitely not true.
Yeah, and the other thing to remember with Unlock is they have a lot of these hidden number puzzles seem to be a big part of their whole deal. Oh, did you notice this thing we hid on this card? Did you notice this? And that can be true in Exit, but it's not the majority of what you're doing. It's not. Yeah, it's oftentimes not a huge part of things. I do like how you see some deviations in the formula with Exit 2, where we've been more like the haunted roller coaster was a series of puzzles. And then some of these other ones have been, well, maybe we should solve this puzzle next, or maybe we should solve this puzzle next, and you're not even sure if you have everything you need to solve a puzzle.
Yep.
So, all right, verdict time. Here on the Abby's Corner, I don't know, we haven't come up with a good full name for this. You rate things on a very different scale from the Dukes of Dice, but kind of a parallel. It's the same scale.
It's a parallel scale with just different definitions for each number.
Right. So we have. I'm trying to remember. I'm kind of blanking on the full thing.
Okay, the scale is based on if Alex asks, "Do you want to play XYZ?" And my answer is a 6. Heck yeah. 5. Yeah. 4. Sure. 3. Okay. 2. 1. No.
Yeah. Although I feel at the bottom end of that scale, the no and like the no almost extends a little bit further in a lot of cases. So what does Unlock as a series from the few you've tried so far? What does that get? If I were to suggest, hey, I bought a new set of Unlock, let's play through one. What does that get typically?
Probably a 5.
Okay. Well, you have to give it in your own scale. Come on.
It's a yeah. It's a yeah.
Trying to steal our scale, man. And then Exit gets
a heck yeah.
A heck yeah. Yeah, it's just that experience, even after having tried something new, you'd still default more towards Exit rather than Unlock.
Yeah, it's a lot more physical. And while Unlock is great and we can do it together, it doesn't require both of us. Like, you could play those by yourself just fine. And I guess, granted, you could do that with Exit, but I think it's a lot easier to bounce ideas off each other in Exit. Should we cut this up? Look around here. Do you see anything on this? This seems like it might have to do with the spinner. I don't know. Like, there's a lot more discussion, I think, that happens in an Exit game that I enjoy when I'm playing a game with you.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That is the Abby and Alex review/discussion of Exit versus Unlock. Recommendations for both, honestly, but just a slight edge to Exit the game for some of the reasons we laid out. Thank you very much, Abby.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, you guys said a lot of really insightful things. Your analysis was apt.
Which at this point of the podcast recording, you have not heard.
Well, that's the joke. That's the joke that I'm making.
Well, they don't know that, but I have to let them in.
Explaining the joke, Conan O'Brien.
All right. Whatever.
Because that's what he does. See what I did there? I made reference to him doing that, and also I explained the joke. It's very meta.
Anyway.
Just call me clever. I just want to hear you say I'm clever just once, Alex.
You are clever sometimes. Maybe not in this moment, but you can be clever.
It was pretty clever.
I don't think so. All right. That's a look at what Abby and I played and not Sean. Let's head on over to the news desk.
So, Alex, I'm looking at this first news item, and I'm like, oh, this is fun. We got a light news week.
No, we do not.
A light, uplifting news week.
Do you want to switch the order of these around just by the sheer nature of this?
Yes, let's do that. Let's end on a high.
Yeah, let's start here. Board game designer and within this past week, Chad Jensen passed away due to cancer. His wife had posted on Board Game Geek, referencing that it had become a terminal diagnosis, that cancer had taken a turn for the worst in October, and he ultimately passed away. For those who don't know, Chad, he designed Combat Commander Europe, Dominant Species, other games as well. His wife expressed a lot of gratitude for the support from the board gaming community. These are not games I've played, but Sean, these are games you have definitely played and had a lot of experience with.
Right. I love Dominant Species. I've played a number of other Chad Jensen games, but of course, Combat Commander, one of my top 10 games. And it's always weird because you wanna honor this person, and the way that you kind of do that is by making it about yourself. Like, I'm not trying to make it about myself, but
yeah. but the kind of the context, yeah, how you knew
Right.
this person's works in context, yeah.
And so I think it's always interesting. So I don't know Chad. I've never interacted with him. But it's interesting whether it's a game designer or it's. I mean, I remember one of the deaths that hit me the hardest was Leonard Nimoy, Spock from Star Trek. When he passed, like it was devastating to me. And hearing about Chad, I was thinking like, wow, this is somebody that has given me hours and hours and hours of enjoyment. And anytime, like if there's a new game with his name on it, I definitely going to be interested, definitely going to check it out. And so it's just kind of sad to know that that's been lost. And so, obviously there's a bunch of people in my situation, a bunch of war gamers that have enjoyed his games over the years. But really I think it's about his family and friends right now. And so, just, deep ducal condolences to them. But definitely made me sad to hear that we lost this awesome, not just designer, but awesome guy.
Yeah, acclaimed designer and someone who leaves a legacy behind in his games and I'm sure in other facets that you know we are within the hobby. We have our own identities, right? As either content creators or publishers or whoever, or even just players and fans and patrons. And life is so much more than that. This is an important part of life, but it's so much more than that. So yeah, being able to kind of take that in as a whole and yeah, it's just a sad loss for the hobby and sad loss overall. So that's about Chad Jensen. This other one was something that really stirred up late in the week and blew up. And it's an odd one for me, if only because I know both of the people involved in this personally. I have had plenty of personal interactions with both sides of this whole thing, and it's weird. So let's talk about this. This is surrounding J.R. Honeycutt, game designer and developer, best known for Fireball Island, Downforce. He did a lot of projects with Restoration, Machikoro Legacy, Seafall, Tesla versus Edison. He has had his hand in a lot of different projects. I think way back in the day, Sean, we talked about Fantasy Baseball,
Right.
among other things. Certainly a well-connected guy who did a lot of freelance work for a bunch of different groups. Victoria Mann, who has worked for a number of companies, including White Wizard Games. I primarily interacted with her in that context. She wrote a Medium article detailing a relationship between the two of them. It started off when JR was with his wife, now ex-wife. The article, it is so hard to kind of do it justice in summary.
Yeah, I think the article speaks for itself. I mean,
It definitely speaks for itself. But just as a quick summary, it raises allegations of emotional, sexual, physical abuse. It details the start of the relationship. It details some cross lines when it comes to personal relationships. And it details a nasty relationship. And a lot of pretty serious allegations in it. Again, hard to do it justice in a summary. I would encourage anyone who has any interest in this area or has heard about this to go read it for themselves. You can certainly find links to it on Reddit, wherever else it was posted to Medium. This led to an immediate, strong response from the hobby. Restoration tweeted out that they had stopped working with him about 6 months ago, that he doesn't get any royalties or other compensation from previous projects. Gil Hova had been co-designing Rival Networks with him. He has since dropped him from the project and will continue it on as a solo affair. Pandasaurus says he was only a contractor in the past. They are making a donation to the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network in response to all of this. Loud condemnation kind of across the hobby. JR himself just responded to this, I believe today or yesterday, via Facebook. In that statement he posted, he apologized to Victoria as well as his ex-wife. He confirmed a lot of the details, although he, quote, aggressively denied that he was physically or sexually abusive. Said that the relationship was consensual, or he believed to be constantly consensual throughout. And then there was a quote in the statement that struck me. It was quote, it is not lost on me that as a vocal proponent of believing women unconditionally, I find myself in a situation where I'm asking for forgiveness in context that might seem to undermine those beliefs. So responses to even that statement were pretty severely critical, negative.
Overwhelmingly.
Yeah, overwhelmingly so. And it's hard to discuss. I mean, in context, I've met Victoria several times at conventions. She's very strong-willed, fierce, intelligent, awesome person. JR, I've had several interactions with in the past. As recently as 2 months ago, we had lunch and went to get custard. Haven't had much contact with him since that point. It's one of these is it's not great, and if it's just hard to talk about at this point, Sean.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm trying to avoid saying too much. I deal with a lot of this in my professional life, and bringing it into a context of, legally speaking, not criminally, but in terms of if there's a divorce case, a custody case, a domestic violence case, things like that. So I'm afraid to kind of say anything because I have a certain amount of authority on the subject, and
Sure.
but without knowing, oh boy, it's rough. It's rough, but I think that given what a lot of companies have done as quickly as they've done this week, given your familiarity with both people, it would seem weird to just kind of not address it.
Yeah. Yep.
At all.
I should note that even BGG stepped in and took action. He was set to be a speaker at BGG Con this upcoming week, and basically they canceled that and pulled his badge. So he has been pretty quickly kind of kicked to the curb by a lot of folks. So now I mentioned that I do know both JR and Victoria in different contexts. To be clear, I had not heard anything about any of this prior to this all coming about. So wasn't anything I had a hint of or knew about. And yeah, so just throwing that out there.
Okay.
Yeah, without saying much more than that. That's the situation that's kind of been going on this week. It's if folks are interested in any further on this, you can his statement I think is available, and you can certainly read the Medium article. That'll give you a much better context than we can do even on this show. But just a really tough situation on a lot of fronts. So that's the rough part of news. Let's transition, I guess, over to South Park. And we've talked in the past about South Park making kind of coy references to board games. This week, it went way further than just kind of a coy reference or kind of a small reference to it. It was way more specific. It was about half the episode, honestly, was devoted to board gaming. It was at the core of the plot, it was surrounding a guys-only board gaming club, and then some girls at the school who wanted to launch their own club, and were super knowledgeable, and the guys were being jerks about it. But they make a lot of specific references in context. 32 different hobby games referenced either by name or shown on screen. We're talking things like Inuit got a shout-out, Vital Lacerda's Escape Plan, D&D, Nemesis, Becca Scott, Tom Vassell, Rodney Smith, Concordia, Engine Building. I mean, it was written certainly by someone who is very, very passionate about the hobby, and to see all of those little references and inside jokes and kind of know what was going on, it was pretty cool. Sean, you mentioned kind of watching that episode. Was that your takeaway too?
Yeah, so I don't watch South Park consistently. I mean, I remember watching it when it first came out. I was in middle school when it first came out. It's kind of weird to think of things like South Park and Simpsons of being like these generational shows at this point. But yeah, every now and then I'll watch a couple episodes on Hulu. Usually it'll come up like after I finish a show on Hulu, and it'll start playing something in at South Park. But when I saw this, I did want to go back and watch it because I'd also heard about last week's episode. There was a board game breakfast parody. And then Tom mentioned it on Board Game Breakfast, and he had mentioned how he and Trey Smith, when Tom was in LA for something, he and Trey Smith like got together and played some games.
Trey Stone, I think.
Trey Stone. Yeah. Matt Parker, Trey Stone. Where did I get Trey Smith from? I don't know where I got.
Or is it Matt Stone and Trey Parker?
Oh, I don't know now. Shoot.
Uh-oh.
One of the creators. But anyway.
Hang on, I'm looking it up.
But yeah, no, this was pretty cool, and it wasn't a surface level thing. This was, I guess, this would technically be the B story of the episode. There were two very unrelated A and B stories.
Yes, although they tied together at the end.
Well, I guess they were kind of related.
They were related thematically somewhat, and then they were tied together very strongly at the end.
Yeah,
they were meant to kind of be as contrast to each other. And in any case, worth watching the episode if you're interested in the hobby and have liked South Park in the past. It was just cool to see. And yeah, the board game breakfast parody was hilarious. That was a shot-for-shot board game breakfast parody done in the context of weed. Tom, if you would think he was upset by that, he certainly didn't seem to be, because they made some references to it the following week. And again, getting name checked on South Park is a pretty big deal. So
it's pretty cool.
It is pretty dang cool. Pretty dang cool. All right. Finally in news, Kickstarter of the week. We're talking about Capone, the Business of Prohibition. This is done by El Dorado Games, previously known for Windward and the Island of El Dorado. The game's mechanics focus on drafting. There's a big focus on trading. You're basically running a speakeasy during Prohibition. So you're going to, each round, I read through the rulebook on this and got a sense of it anyway. You're going to draft cards that represent different patrons that you can have in your bar, customers, and then you're also going to bid on a truck, a sort of a quote-unquote milk truck that actually has the alcohol stowed inside. You'll then unload those bottles, and then trading can begin. You'll trade customers, you'll trade bottles. If you have too many bottles at a certain point in the game, Al Capone pays you a visit and smashes all your stuff. You flip a coin to see how much of other people's stuff he smashes up, so be careful. You serve folks enough, they become regulars, they give you bigger tips. The look of this is really what had me fascinated by it. Sean, are you looking at the page now?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and I think what's really cool is it has these player screens to keep some of the components hidden for you, but it's basically a little speakeasy bar, and it looks really cool. And the other components are fantastic. So, but anyway, the screen's got the storefront, and then on the back it's this bar. It looks really cool.
Yeah, and you stand up cards inside. You have bottles slinging around. You kind of put your barkeep on the sidewalk when you're making bets and trades, and then you pull them back into your shop when you're ready to serve customers. A lot of really interesting little thematic ties. High-end components. We're talking metal coins here. Those storefronts you mentioned. I showed a picture of this to Abby, and she was like, "Whoa, that looks cool." And it does. I like the art style. I like how the thing looks. What I'm not sure I like so much, Sean, with this game is the price point. It's $54 base pledge price point. And if that included shipping, I think I'd probably be on board. $15 shipping in the US, so you're talking $69 for this game. And at least having read the rulebook, it just, to me, didn't seem like there was enough game behind the bling to have it be worthwhile. I'm not going to pledge, but this is a cool looking project. And if this is a theme that really intrigues you or attracts you, I think this is one that would certainly be worth looking into, especially if you like negotiation games. That seems to be a pretty big core of what's going on in Capone. As of the time of this recording, $38,000 pledge. Project has funded. It's set to end November 26th. Sean, any interest in backing this, or is that kind of in a weird zone for you?
No, I'm not going to do that. The price point's too high. It looks interesting. I'd certainly give it a shot, but yeah, I'll pass. Table
presence for days. I don't know if the gameplay behind it is enough to warrant the price point. You never know. But that's Capone, the Business of Prohibition, and that is a look at the news. Hey, Sean, they say Rome wasn't built in a day, but you can lay down a foundation pretty quickly. In a day? You think in a day? You can lay down a foundation in a day?
I think less than a day. I don't think it's going to be that long of a game, Alex. I think it's a game length you'd at least play.
Oh, that's good, because I'm pretty limited in that scope. Foundations of Rome, coming soon from Arcane Wonders on Kickstarter. And Sean, you have seen this one before, and you've been excited by this one before.
Yes, Alex, this has some incredibly crafted, beautiful architectural miniatures, different distinct architectural styles for the different players. It creates this fantastic looking cityscape that really has to be seen to believe. The city building board game Foundations of Rome puts you into the role of an architect competing to own land and build magnificent structures. Build damus and insulae, fountains, wineries, and stables, then increase your renown by constructing majestic monuments such as a temple to Jupiter or the Colosseum itself. With over 100 wonderfully detailed miniatures, Foundations of Rome is a testament to the glory of Rome that you can bring to your table.
That looks pretty cool, and it's done by a pretty awesome designer in Emerson Matsuchi, who has done a number of other Dutchy favorites. So, yeah, if you're curious about this game, go to foundationsofrome.com, click on the sign-up link to sign up and get notified when it goes live on Kickstarter. Arcane Wonders, it's never a blunder when you go with Arcane Wonders. Toptonia. Table share. I can't.
Oh, Alex, yeah. So,
Well, I was trying to sing the national anthem of Game Topper Nation.
yeah.
It didn't work too well, but we're gonna keep this ad going anyway.
So yeah, Alex, Game Topper Nation.
Yeah.
We've talked quite a bit about GameToppersLLC.com. You can like them and follow them on Facebook, but there's also Game Topper Nation, which you can join to basically show off your game toppers. Not only show them off, but look at other people's game toppers so you can see how fantastic these amazing toppers are for playing some of your favorite board games. Plus, Berkey, our buddy Berkey, uses it for polls. Like if, hey, we need new playmats. What would you guys like to see in terms of new playmats? And he throws them out there so you can help him figure out what everyone's gonna want to see on the latest new playmats. Alex, Alex, you are an honorary citizen of the Game Topper Nation because you have a Game Topper.
I do indeed. I just officially joined Game Topper Nation Facebook group and have been informed by Facebook that a passport is already on its way.
Oh, perfect.
I'm a dual citizen, Sean, of both the United States and of Game Topper Nation.
Well, if you could only keep one citizenship, Alex, which would that be?
It would be a close call, because on one hand, you get to vote on fantastic polls on the future of Game Toppers, and the other, just all of the, citizenship benefits of being a United States citizen.
So head on over to Facebook to check out Game Topper Nation, and head on over to their website, GameToppersLLC.com.
This week, we're looking into a deep plunge into a rich world of superheroes, villains, worldwide brands that have really taken over at the box office. Is this a board game that can take over your table, though? We're talking Marvel Champions.
Marvel Champions is a new cooperative living card game from Fantasy Flight Games, designed by Michael Boggs, Nate French, and Caleb Grace. And in this game, each player is taking on the role of a character from Marvel, a superhero and their alter ego. So, for example, Tony Stark and Iron Man, Peter Parker and Spider-Man. And at the start of the game, you're going to have picked a deck, basically taking that character's deck, which is, I think it's usually 15 cards, some basic cards, these kind of neutral cards, and then you can choose one aspect. There's strength, protection, leadership, and justice. And from that aspect, that pool of cards, you can add certain cards in. There's some deck building restrictions, but we're not going to go too much into detail there. So after you and your friends have chosen your deck, you're then going to pick which villain you're going to be facing off against. So in the starter set, you've got Rhino, you have Claw, and you have Ultron. And for each one of them, there's a different main scheme that they're trying to enact. And throughout the game, you're going to be placing threat on the scheme. And there may be multiple stages, but ultimately, if too much scheme is placed or too much threat is placed on the scheme, the game's over, you're going to lose. Also, if your characters all die, you're going to lose. And what you're trying to do is basically defeat the villain, deal enough damage to the villain through two stages of the villain, essentially, to defeat them, and you're victorious. So that's how that works. The turn structure is going to look like this. All of the heroes are going to take a turn, and then the villain's going to take a turn. So on your turn, you're going to be able to play cards from your hand. Usually you have a hand size of 6, although that's different from one character to the next, and it also is dependent on whether or not you're in hero form or alter ego form. Cards have a cost in the upper left-hand corner. Sometimes they're 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there's one that's 5. And you're going to pay this by discarding other cards from your hand. Other cards, or all cards, really have a resource that they can generate by discarding them. There are certain special cards that might generate 2 or 3 resources. And so you're spending cards to put cards into play. There are cards that are events that you resolve their effect and they get discarded. There are upgrade cards, support cards, ally cards that come in and will stay in play for a while. And all of these cards are basically there to either deal some amount of damage to the villain or to minions that the villain's going to bring out, or to remove threat from the scheme or some of the side schemes that might come up. So after everyone has taken their turns, choosing to play cards, choosing to use their hero or their alter ego to either recover health or to attack or thwart, which is the way that you're removing threat from schemes, then the villain's going to get to go. By this point, everyone's drawn back up to their full hand size and reset everything. The villain is going to add a certain amount of threat to the main scheme dependent on the number of players. And then the villain is going to attack or scheme for each player depending on their alter ego. So if I'm in my hero form, the villain's going to attack me. The villain has some sort of attack stat. We then flip a card off the encounter deck, and there's a little modifier at the bottom of each card. If you, however, Alex, are in your alter ego form, instead of attacking you, the villain is going to scheme. Same thing. They have a scheme stat. They're going to flip a card off the top to add a modifier to that. We add that to the main scheme. And then once that's happened for the villain and each player, plus any minions that have engaged with that player, then we're each going to get dealt an encounter card. Same cards from that same encounter deck, but instead of the modifier, we're now looking at an effect. And the effect might say, the villain attacks again, or the villain schemes again, or go through the encounter deck and find a certain minion and put it into play, engage with you. A whole bunch of stuff that could happen there. Once that's done, then you can start back up and it's everyone's turn again, rotate first player, and keep going until the villain has achieved their wily scheme or until you've defeated them. That's the long and short of it. Obviously, it's a living card game with a lot of nuance and a lot more going on, but that's the bulk of it, enough to provide the context for our discussion here. So, Alex, what were your expectations with Marvel Champions?
Well, I think we've discussed previously that licensed titles are not, it's just not an area that has a lot of appeal for me. It's not an area I care a ton about. It's even though I've watched a lot of the Marvel series of movies and I'm familiar with it from a thematic standpoint, I haven't watched every single one in the MCU. LCGs I've had some degree of success with. I've played the Arkham Horror LCG and just the first scenario of that, and found it at least somewhat interesting. It wasn't overwhelmingly great. So coming into this one, I wasn't sure, right? There's deck construction is at least part of it, and deck construction has never been a favorite thing of mine. The theme is something I like, but I'm not over the moon, have to be engaged with. So I had tepid expectations, I think is the best way of summarizing. Tepid. What about you, Sean?
So, okay, so I'm kind of the opposite, right? I'm the foil in this case, where I love the theme, and I love LCGs. I think I've played every LCG that Fantasy Flight has come out with the exception of the Star Wars LCG that came out years and years ago. For some reason, never played that. But I think I've played just about every LCG. I've played the old Warhammer Fantasy one, the Warhammer 40K one. Anyway, I like LCGs. I like them a lot. In fact, I would say that games like Netrunner and Legend of the Five Rings are games that I would easily consider sixes, but there's a certain aspect of LCGs where you have to keep up with them, and they become kind of a lifestyle game. The cooperative games, though, have the ability to be a little bit different, and this is a co-op, just like Lord of the Rings and Arkham Horror. In fact, I knew going into this that this drew heavily off both of those games, and there's some obviously strong similarities in mechanics there. Games that I've played both and have enjoyed quite a bit. Arkham Horror, when we reviewed it, you, Alex, were on your walkabout, and I gave it a 5. I think I'd probably consider Lord of the Rings a 5 as well. And what I knew about this going in was that this was kind of a streamlined version of Arkham Horror LCG or Lord of the Rings, and that made me a little cautious because I don't necessarily need a streamlined game or am looking for a streamlined game, but I could see why they would do that because they want to make this as accessible as possible to a wide audience. So I had, I think, pretty, I would say, moderately high expectations going in. I figured this would be something I would like. And turns out I was right. It is something I like. It's something I enjoyed. What about you?
I lost track of what you were saying.
What did you think of the game, Alex?
As a whole?
As a whole.
I was pleasantly surprised in a lot of ways with it. It ultimately, the best comparison I found with this wasn't to another LCG, but was to another game where the system was great, but the implementation on the table was iffy.
Sentinels.
Yeah, Sentinels in the Multiverse. Yeah, and Sentinels is a game where I enjoyed the system so much when it was on an iPad. I liked playing 4 different decks against the villain, and I liked having those different modifiers tracked on there. I liked this feel of hero versus villain. It was well set up, even if I didn't necessarily know the backstories of any of the Sentinels of the Multiverse heroes. The problem is on the table, it just was a clunky mess in a lot of cases. There were just too many modifiers to keep track of. There were too many things that you could easily screw up and not do well. And in a co-op game, it can too easily feel like you're cheating the game in a sense when you do something like that. I was pleasantly surprised because it had a lot of that feel to it of versatile decks acting in different ways, heroes that can kind of bounce off of each other and come together in fun ways, villain decks that operate in unique ways as well, and it all came together in a more streamlined package. So as a whole, I'd say I ended up being pretty pleasantly surprised. It wasn't completely perfect for me, but I think what it sets out to do, it accomplishes actually really well. That was my overall impression of the game.
So this is one of your classic Fantasy Flight rulebook situations where there's kind of a low rules overhead book, the learn to play book, and then the alphabetical rules reference. How did you learn to play the game, Alex?
Yeah, I learned it. It was Matthew. We both formerly worked at Gray Fox Games. He has since moved on, actually. But he already knew the game, was super passionate about it, ended up teaching me at a game night. And then on subsequent plays, I ended up, making some references in the rulebook itself. But I didn't learn to play from the rulebook. I'm not sure if it would have been easier or hard to do so. Did you learn this one from the rulebook, Sean?
Yeah, I did. And I think as a get started guide, learn to play guide, I think it was fine. What I've seen a lot online is a lot of complaints about certain corner cases and timing cases, which is always going to be there with any sort of card game LCG, unless you have a super defined game system like Magic that has a 400-page comprehensive rulebook, right? What's interesting to me is at the very beginning of the rulebook, of the main reference book, there's a rule that says if you can't figure out the rules, interpret it in the way that's worst for the players.
Mm.
I'm better off. I'm okay doing that in a co-op game, right? I feel like that's a little bit better because no one's getting something off on someone else, right?
It's the game that gets an advantage, yeah.
Right. And I'm okay with that because I don't want my co-op games to be easy. I don't it feels bad when you lose, but I don't want to win every single time because then it doesn't feel as good when you do win. So I'm okay with that. And there's certainly some ambiguities, there's certainly some corner cases, and it's going to take some official errata from Fantasy Flight Games, which they do. And it is what it is. It wasn't a huge hurdle for me, although there would be some times where we'd bring a game crashing to a halt because we'd start looking something up. Sometimes we could figure it out and sometimes we couldn't.
Yeah. It there were definitely plenty of moments of stopping and how does this resolve? What's the timing of this? When this happens, how does this go? And some of it is well laid out in the appendix. Some of it isn't. There's a rule, and I'm trying to remember if it was even in the rule overview. It might be referencing when you go through the villain deck,
Yeah.
you add an acceleration marker to the thing, which is a pretty big deal, right? You're accelerating the main scheme. It's a lose condition for you. I don't remember that being at least easily found in the rulebook, and it was something my first play that we didn't actually include, and might have actually cost us the game if we had included it. So in subsequent plays, we figured that out and were aware of it, but it just seems like there's a lot of rules that were important that were tucked away in that
Yes.
rules reference, and I don't think that was so well done. I understand why they did it, but I don't think it worked as well as they wanted to. I also found the instructions tied around deck building and deck construction, I should say, were a little ambiguous too, at least for my money.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, I did notice there were a lot of times I'd be playing the game. So I'll say most of my plays of this were actually solo. I played this exactly 30 times, Alex, exactly 30 games, and I'd say 20 of them were solo.
30 games?
30
Whoa.
games. Yeah.
You, sir, are very properly prepared for this review.
I'm very prepared. I played this game a lot, and I enjoyed it a lot.
One might even say you are 10 times as well prepared for this review as I am.
Wow.
One might say that.
One might say that. I won't say that. I have played every hero against every villain. I've played on multiple difficulties. I wouldn't say I've played every hero with every aspect, but I've played every hero with at least 2 different aspects.
Okay.
So yeah, I've got a pretty broad view of the game here. But what I will say is, in my multiplayer games, there would often be a time when I would do something and Eugene, for example, would say, "Oh no, it works this way," or vice versa. And so that was kind of nice to kind of it would have been nice to just be able to process that in one go. It's hard with a rules reference, this alphabetical thing, because there's no linear, logical progression. It's just, here's all the A categories, all the B categories. You can sit down and read through that, but that's not great. So there was definitely little corner cases that we pick up while we were playing the game, which I don't think affected overall experience, but it would be nice if there were a better, like for example, like you said, with the acceleration tokens being added when you go through the encounter deck. Or there was a question of, we knew that when your deck ran out, you would be dealt a new encounter card that would get resolved later on, so potentially 2 encounter cards instead of 1, but it wasn't quite clear at first glance, when does that occur? Does that occur when my deck runs out? Does that occur when I'm forced to draw and I don't have anything there? Because different games deal with that in different ways. And it turns out, no, as soon as your deck is emptied. Also, there was a rule that I completely missed that says if you're forced to discard cards from your deck, but you run out of cards, once you reshuffle your deck, you stop discarding. Which is only a big deal for a couple cases, but like for Tony Stark, he has some sort of blaster that lets you discard cards from the deck, and if they match a certain thing, you get extra damage.
Right.
And so there were a couple games where I would discard 3 cards, my deck would empty, and I'd then discard the 2 fresh ones off the top of the deck, and apparently I wasn't supposed to do that. So little things like that, but it's what it is.
Okay. Yeah, I think overall the rulebook does fine, but I think it definitely holds the game back in some respects. I'd say it's more a negative than a positive for this game.
Sure.
From my standpoint. Art and components, Sean.
Yeah, so this so let's talk about art. It's got your Marvel comic book art, and I think it looks good, and I think the art is good. I think that the graphic design of the cards is good. I think it looks like a solid Fantasy Flight LLG. That's the thing you're going to get with Fantasy Flight in terms of art, graphic design, that it's always going to be very competent to good, or to very good. And I think it's definitely up there.
Yeah, I think it looks, the cards themselves look really good. Art is representative. Yeah, it looks fantastic. I mean, it was readable. Iconography worked as well as it needed to. Um, Abilities were explained well on the cards. The language of the game was easy enough to process. Yeah, I think the only thing is that I would every now and then forget on the side schemes which ones did what. Which ones
Okay.
were, this one's an acceleration. This one's a you can't do anything on the side scheme until you get rid of this one. Which one is the draw an extra card? And I don't know if they could have done something that would have signified those a little better. But I'd say that was a very, very small complaint. Overall, I think it looks great on the table. The tokens are of decent thickness. The status cards all work well. I don't have any complaints on that front. My biggest complaint I have, and maybe I just got a defective copy, Sean. You can tell me if I got a defective copy. The insert has little slots to where you could put in dividers
Yep.
to divide and organize everything. I didn't get anything that actually slots in there. Did you?
No, and it doesn't come with that. Because I've seen, trust me, I've seen like 4 copies because everyone at the shop at Empire has bought a copy, and we all had our own decks, and for the most part. And so here's what I figured out. I don't think they're there for dividers because they're too thick for dividers. I think what they're there for is once you've sleeved your copy. Alex, did you sleeve your copy?
Of course not.
I know. I'll say this. I sleeved my copy and it has remained sleeved, unlike other games that we've reviewed recently. And so when they're sleeved, they can kind of, it creates, the cards will kind of fall into the indentations to prevent a lot of slipping and sliding, is I think what it's there for. Because otherwise, the grooves are too thick for dividers. You're going to have like super thick dividers, which doesn't make any sense. I did go to BGG. There's a bunch of different dividers there. I printed up these nice color dividers. I corner clipped them so that it looks really spiffy. I 3D printed some token holders for all the tokens. So nice little organized system I got going. I definitely blinged out my copy as much as possible. I have seen where people are 3D printing these status tokens, but I think I like the cards because there's confused, tough, and stunned. Stunned means the next time this character would attack, it doesn't, just discard the card. Tough means the next time they take damage, get rid of this card instead. And confused is the next time the villain would scheme, get rid of the card instead. I like that they're there as reminders. I don't need them at this point, but for newer players, certainly would need them. And it's nice that the cards themselves explain that. But then it's got, like you said, nice tokens for the damage, for the threat. There's generic counter tokens. And then there's this nice little first player marker. I think it's a solid production. And if it weren't, I would be shocked because again, Fantasy Flight, this is one of the things that they do very well.
Again, going back though, my box is an absolute, like these cards are an absolute mess.
I would imagine.
An absolute catastrophe. And the fact that they don't have an organization system of some kind is baffling to me. I guess some of it comes from the fact that they're going to have a lot more content as this game goes.
Let's do this. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So let's post on the guild. I'll take a picture of the inside of my box.
Oh God.
And you take a picture of the inside of your box, and we'll compare. We'll do that on the guild and on Twitter.
I'm sure yours looks great, Sean. You actually prep when you get these kind of things. I did not do so.
Well, if I enjoy them, right? You know, like with Undaunted Normandy the other week, I was all ready to print stuff up, and then after my first game, I'm like, let me hold off.
Yeah.
So,
gameplay, Sean. Does this thing succeed? Is it fun? Does it make you feel clever?
Oh, absolutely. So it's really interesting. So this is in a lot of ways, like most co-ops, a puzzle. It's a puzzle game where you're trying to figure out how to set yourself up, set up an engine or set up card advantage or set up being able to do more powerful things while you're playing control, while you're controlling to make sure that too much threat isn't being amassed, that you're not being overwhelmed by all of these villains, that all of these side schemes aren't coming out that are making things harder for you by giving you more encounter draws or by increasing the rate at which the main scheme gets threat added to it. And I enjoy those. I enjoy co-ops. You always have the danger of an alpha gamer, and I definitely have the danger of being that alpha gamer. And so I'm cognizant of that. But I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed playing this solo. I really enjoyed playing it solo. I enjoyed the discovery of figuring out the different which aspects to go with which heroes. Um, One of the things that is true for Lord of the Rings and for Arkham Horror for the most part, and I have, at this point, I have much less experience with both of those games. I've probably played Arkham Horror about 15 times. I've probably played Lord of the Rings about 20 times. In those games, you can't really build an all-comers deck. In other words, you almost have to tailor your deck to the particular scenario that you're playing. And I think that's true to an extent here, but I think that there are certain heroes and certain combinations that are better at dealing with most situations than others. My absolute favorite build is Iron Man with Justice. Justice has a lot of control over threat, um, and I really like it. I really like it a lot. Um, so yeah, what did you think, Alex? The gameplay. I could keep going, but I'm gonna
No, and I'm sure you will. I will say, the things it does really well are things like the alter ego hero system.
Oh yeah,
That's such a satisfying element of this game. The fact that you'll need time occasionally to recover. You'll have certain abilities that will only trigger when you're in one or the other. That you can do this really cool attack, but you can only do it when you're a hero because obviously you can't fight a villain if you're not well set up to do that. This decision of having to try and defend in some respects, are you going to exhaust yourself preventing damage, which will allow you to stay in hero form longer? Because the longer you can stay in hero form, the slower that the main villain advances the scheme. The more damage you can do, the more you can advance, removing threat. But when you're an alter ego, you're recovering. There's some cool abilities that play off of that. If I'm recalling, Aunt May comes to mind with the recovery boost she gets in the Spider-Man deck. That system was really cool. I also liked, and we'll talk about thematics in much more detail, but I like how the encounter deck is set up so that it has specific things for whoever you're playing with. The obligation cards that specifically, this is Peter Parker's obligation. The rent is due. This comes out of the deck, and it kind of forces you to. Everyone's going to have some interesting moments. You don't know when your arch nemesis might pop in, and some games you'll have them in there, some games you won't. It feels like a story. And again, I know I'm touching more on thematics than gameplay, but it's a hugely important part of gameplay to me. And yeah, you get a lot of moments to feel clever, and you get a lot of moments when you're playing with multiple people to cooperate and say, "Hey, I've got the Marvel the Avengers Mansion out. Do you want me to take the extra card, or do you need an extra card for your turn?"
Right.
You can request actions from other people. It allows you to not be bound too much by turn order and that structure. The system itself is fairly elegant. It's almost too elegant in some ways. It takes you a bit to get used to the fact that resources pay for anything. It doesn't really matter what color they are, except in certain situations. The game does a lot of things really well. Really well. I'm impressed with how different the heroes feel, how thematic they feel, how tied they feel to who they are. I don't care about deck construction, and this game makes it so I kind of don't have to. That I can build a perfectly competent deck just by slapping in all cards of an archetype or most cards of an archetype and a handful of random basic cards, and I'm probably pretty well set up to at least be competitive in a game and contribute. But I also imagine, Sean, for someone like you who gets way more into deck construction, that building can be really satisfying in that finding just the little efficiencies and little advantages. It's not a part of gameplay I'm engaged with, but it doesn't get in the way here. It doesn't get in the way of me enjoying it.
And what's interesting, I'll say about that is I think that FFG intended to, at least from the core set, to make it so that you can build at least 2 and possibly 4 decks. They gave you enough cards to do what you need to do and to build solid decks without having to buy multiple core sets. And on top of that, they also intended, I think, and succeeded in making it so, at least starting with just the core set, deck construction, like you said, is pretty straightforward. Typically, when it comes to Netrunner, or when I was playing Legend of the Five Rings, I would try my hand at deck building, but ultimately I'd go look online to see what other people are doing to to really see, is there some oversight that I'm making. I never did that with this game because there is there is an ease to deck construction that is not present in a lot of LCGs. Now, there are some interesting nuanced decisions that I think you would hate to, like, this is what you don't like, right? Like, so for example, Avengers Mansion and Helicarrier. Almost every deck needs one. Helicarrier reduces the cost of a card you play by one. And then the Avengers Mansion lets a player draw a card. They are excellent cards. But there's a limit, max one per player. Alex, how many of those do you want in your deck?
Am I playing 4-player or solo?
Let's say you're playing solo.
Probably, I would think 2, because
Okay.
it would give you a better chance of drawing at least one.
Oh, look at you nuanced deck constructor.
I figured it was a trick. Figured it was a trick question. That was the
Yeah.
only reason I got that.
And there's arguments for and against, and it depends, But the other thing, too, is there's a mulligan system in this game where you can discard any number of cards from your hand, draw back up to your hand size at the start of the game, but those discarded cards stay discarded. Generally, they're in most games, they're kind of shuffled back in. And I found myself very aggressively mulliganing for a very particular hand. A hand where I'm hopefully getting at least a Helicarrier or Avengers Mansion or one or two of the double resource cards, or depending on the hero I am, some of the upgrade cards that I need to really get the engine building or engine going. And I liked all of that. I liked making the decision of, do I need these spots for 2 helicarriers, or can I get away with just the one? Well, I really want to see, with 4 cards, with 2 helicarriers and 2 Avengers Mansions, I'm pretty set on seeing at least one of those with an aggressive mulligan in my opening hand, which is very helpful. I will point out, like I said, if you do run through your deck, though, you're going to get dealt an extra encounter card, and so there is a downside to aggressively mulliganing, but I felt it to be pretty important. So I really enjoyed the deck construction in this, and I think it is going to get harder, though, because what's going to happen is they're going to start putting out new hero packs. So I think the first one's going to be Captain America, and you could play him right out of the box. It's going to be Captain America, and I think leadership is what I think is what it said. But then it's also going to introduce new cards for other aspects. I think it's like 3 cards per aspect. And so now you have to start making tougher decisions, because right now the decision is, okay, I picked the aspect and I could play with all of them because the deck is basically 40 to 50 cards. So you have 15 cards from your hero. You have 10 basic cards, give or take. And then do you want to run all of that aspect, or do you want to cut some out, or do you not want to play with whatever? But eventually, as the card pools get bigger, the decisions are going to be harder to make. And I think that's when you might find a little more frustration, Alex.
Yeah, it's not something I'm engaged with, but again, it's not something I feel like I have to be engaged with to have fun with the game.
Right.
I feel like I can have fun with the game without getting quite that deep. Now, I think if you want to beat some of the higher level scenarios, it's possible you'll need to optimize your deck in a better fashion.
Yes.
And that may be where I'd run into issues. I didn't play any of the really high level scenarios in here. The question that's going to come up with this system, just in this box alone, is there enough replayability and variability to be worth it? You played this thing 30 times, Sean, which is more than most people play any board game, honestly, by a good amount. I take it that means there's enough replayability and variability in here to hold someone's attention just on the base set, the core set.
Yeah, I feel like at 30 plays, at $60, that's what, $2 a play?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, that's not too bad. And I've probably got another dozen or so games in me of just the core set. And before you know it, Captain America is going to come out. There's a Green Goblin scenario deck that's coming out. That's what I'd like to see more of, obviously, are more scenarios and more varied scenarios. And I'll say that's what brings you back with the replayability. So the first villain that they recommend you start with is Rhino. Rhino is dead simple. Basically, you put a certain amount on the scheme, game's over, and he just damages you pretty well. Then you can proceed to claw, and there is a bit of a narrative link here that they try and make, but it's not super strong. But you proceed to claw. Claw is a little bit more nuanced. There's multiple stages to the main scheme, and then in addition, each of these villains, you create the encounter deck, and there's decisions to be made here. So you have the villain deck, plus you add in the standard cards, the standard encounter cards, and then you add in a supplemental. And there's like 5 in the main box. There's Bomb Scare, there's Masters of Evil, there's the Doomsday Chair. There's a bunch, right? So there's some variability with that. And then if you want to, you could spice things up by adding in 3 cards, the 3 expert cards, right? So there's a lot of different ways to kind of configure that encounter deck to adjust the difficulty. And you could decide whether or not you want to start with the basic villain or the enhanced villain. So there's 2 stages of the villain you have to defeat. At normal level, it's 1 and 2. The 2 has higher hit points, and there's usually some sort of effect that either when it comes into play or some ongoing effect. And if you want to increase difficulty, instead of starting 1-2, you start at 2 and go 2-3. And then the last villain I mentioned was Ultron, and Ultron is super crazy. Ultron is basically creating these Ultron drones from your deck. You deal cards from your deck face up that are engaged with you. They're easy to deal with, but you can get swarmed by them. And generally, the more of them out, there are certain encounter cards that make Ultron more powerful. Like he'll deal a bunch of damage based on how many drones are engaged with you and things like that. So there's definitely a good amount of variability here. After 30 plays, maybe 40 plays, though, that might be starting to run a bit thin. But that's okay after 40 plays. But with any card game, I mean, man, I get bored with Magic after I've played the same deck, 40 or 50 times. And that's one of the strengths of Magic is there's so many different ways to play, so many different cards to explore, so many different combos and interactions. What I will say though, last thing I'll kind of say on this gameplay thing, what I found really enjoyable about this, and what you mentioned too, and what we talk about a lot, is when a game can make you feel clever. And I think what makes me feel clever in this game is how important the sequencing is. The sequencing is so vital to this game because there are certain cards, like you mentioned, that are hero actions or alter ego actions, which you have to be in that right form. And you can flip for free from one form to the next, but you can only do that once per turn. And so maybe you're starting out a turn in alter ego form and you decide to flip early on to hero form, and then a card draw occurs and it gives you that alter ego action. Well, now you can't use it this turn, or vice versa. It's pretty interesting. When you play a game like Magic, just a standard game of Magic, nothing too crazy, sequencing is important, but it's not necessarily vital. When you're playing a more complex combo deck, it obviously becomes more important. And so what I really enjoyed here is this is more than just, play some resources, put some cards out, attack. The sequencing is vital here. And I think it's what recognizing the sequencing, I think, is what changes this from, decent player to an advanced player. And so there's a lot of opportunities to feel clever, especially when you're playing a game. And this is what I felt with Iron Man, was I'm just playing a control game and then I'm building up to a point where I've reached a critical mass and now I'm dealing like 20 points of damage in one turn. And that feels super satisfying. It feels fantastic.
We had, in one of my recent games, we had someone was playing as Captain Marvel and was playing an ally-heavy strategy and manipulating things to where their allies, I think they had, what's that ally's name? It's the robot. It's
Vision. So Vision.
Vision
Captain
dealt
Marvel with leadership.
With enough buffs. Vision dealt 18 damage in one turn, because he was able to get Vision to activate attack with some boosts to where it was a 6 value attack.
Yeah,
and then ready you, and then attack again, ready and attack again. Kind of shenanigans that you can get in this game, but it's super satisfying moments. And in a game like Magic, sometimes those shenanigans are are tough for me. I haven't played Magic in a very long time, but they're the kind of combos that a newer player is not going to be able to get their head wrapped around.
Right.
The beauty of this is it's all to your benefit. It's to the team's benefit. It's a cooperative game. So there's not a competitive, like, I'm better at beating this villain than you are. You're all just kind of cheering together when you pull off something cool. So
yeah.
Player count, Sean, is solo your favorite way to play this?
I think so. So I did not play at 4 players. I played at 2 a bunch of times. I played at 3 a bunch of times, and I think 3 is the limit. After playing 3, I was like, I'm sorry guys, I'm not going to play this at 4. What's really nice about solo is you're playing at your speed, right? And I can play a solo game in about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on the villain, depending on card flips and things like that. I enjoyed that. And so when you lose, it's like, all right, I'll just shuffle up and play again. I invested 15 minutes and I lost. No big whoop. When you're playing a 3-player game, we had some plays that were probably an hour and a half. And I wasn't super crazy about that length of play. And it does make losing a little worse. And it makes it harder to I just remembered something. It makes it harder to kind of accept that defeat. What I will say is I played a game with Chris. In fact, my 30th game, Alex, my 30th game was a 2-player game with our buddy Chris Holm. And it was his second game. In fact, his first game, he had some rules down pretty wrong. But we played, and I was playing my favorite Iron Man deck, and he died. He died about midway through the game. And so I kept playing because it's when one player dies, you keep playing, but nothing changes in terms of player count. So if usually you're adding 1 scheme to the main threat per player. Well, even though there's just me left, you're still adding 2. So that aspect of the difficulty does not go down. And at that point, we hadn't even really scratched the surface of the first level of the villain, and things were looking pretty bad. And so I sat there and he watched me play for like 15 minutes, and I pulled it out, Alex. And it was I was pretty impressed. No one else was impressed because I had both Matt and Matthew were kind of watching, and they were not impressed, but I was impressed with myself. But the comment that I found funny was Matthew said that I pulled an Alex by continuing to play and making Chris watch.
Huh.
I don't know exactly what that means, but
I don't know if that's totally true. Sean, I will tell you, in terms of player count, I almost exclusively played this at 4 players.
Oh my goodness. And you still enjoyed it.
I still enjoyed it. And I think I would enjoy it more at 2, certainly more at 3, even more at 2. And it's possible solo would be incredibly satisfying. I wanted to jump into it, and I just didn't end up having I wouldn't say the time. I definitely had the time to play it solo. I think the will, the interest in playing it solo, but hearing you describe it has me curious to see how that experience works. The thing I'll say for 4 players, it's too dang long. I mean, people acknowledge that. It's just it's too dang long at that player count. But on the positive side of things, there are some cool moments of camaraderie that come out of that.
Absolutely.
The teamwork that you can have working together, all of that is fantastic. So I enjoyed it from that perspective. I didn't enjoy how long it took. It was close to like 2.5 hours was a typical play at 4 players. And fun. They were all actually fun, engaging plays, but they definitely overstayed their welcome just a bit, which I think if I'd played at lower player counts, it might ultimately have affected my overall perception of the game. But again, I still enjoyed it even in a non-optimal situation. So I think that says something for the game. All right, let's talk theme. Theme is incredibly well done in this game.
Absolutely.
Incredibly well done. I mentioned the obligations. I mentioned the different, there's side schemes that affect things in different ways. The villains do fun, interesting things. Their minions do fun, interesting things. The characters feel like the characters. Sean, did you develop any favorites over the course of playing this?
Oh, yeah. Tony Stark, Iron Man. Absolutely. I mean, Iron Man has been my favorite for a long time, and so it was natural that I would gravitate to him. But on top of that, the fact that all of these decks play so differently, all of the heroes play so differently, and then they play differently even more so when you combine them with different aspects. But Iron Man is interesting. So when he's in Iron Man form, he has a hand limit of 1 card, but you get +1 for every tech upgrade that he has. So basically, you're assembling his suit, which is the coolest thing, right? There are 2 cards that represent his gauntlets, 2 cards that represent his boots. You have his the Mark V armor, you have the helmet, you have his arc reactor, and all of them do their own little things. And so he's only attack 1 in Iron Man form, right? Which is not much. But then you start adding in the benefit of the gauntlets and the helmet, and like it's super cool. You're putting together the suit. So every game you're playing with Iron Man, it's kind of an origin story because he's building the suit from scratch, which is kind of weird. But then there are just some big turns after that. So with Iron Man, you're just playing control. You're just controlling the board, putting your suit together. And I love it too that you're switching out of hero form from time to time, right? It's this idea that, well, you went in and things didn't go so well, so you go out and you recover, and the villain doesn't know who you are, so you're not getting attacked. I thought that's pretty cool. Black Panther is kind of similar. Black Panther builds all of these, he builds a suit also, but they don't do anything until you play one of your 5 Wakanda Forever cards.
Yeah.
And then you choose the chain, the order in which they go off, and the one that goes off last has kind of a double effect. It is super cool. Plus, he has Vibranium, which is just it's a 2 resource. No, yeah, it's a 2 resource card, right? So he has additional resources there. Spider-Man.
That's my favorite, by the way. My personal favorite.
Spider-Man's my least favorite to play. Just because he's a very reactive. His whole deck is kind of about his spidey sense and the fact that he can prevent things from happening. You play in reaction, but it means you're a little less proactive on your turn, and you're kind of holding on to cards that you're going to wait to play. So that's fine.
Backflip.
Yeah. Like prevents damage and all. It's interesting. Not my preferred style of play. You have She-Hulk, who is a lawyer, right? And so She-Hulk, you want her to take damage because the more damage she takes, she does certain things. I mean, she's the tankiest of tanks because she starts off at 15 health, I think.
Yes.
And so she does some really cool things with having been damaged. She can lots of cool stuff with her.
Also, her ally Hulk is a pain in the neck. Can be really good for crowd control, but can also really backfire on you.
Right, which is very thematic. And then you have Captain Marvel, who also has her own resource card, like Vibranium. Was it Photon something? Or I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, it provides 3 energy. It's the only 3 energy card in the game right now, or 3 resource card in the game. And she's basically doing things where she's storing up energy for these big, powerful bursts. So I enjoyed playing her the most. If I were to rank my order of enjoyment, it is probably Iron Man, Black Panther, She-Hulk, Captain Marvel tied, and then Spider-Man last.
Aw, man. I just always identify with Spider-Man the most, I think.
Yeah. And then if I were to rank the aspects, it goes justice, leadership, aggression, protection.
Okay. Well, in any case, it is an incredibly thematic. It does great justice to its theme. Yeah, they did a great job. There's not much more to say. They knocked it out of the park. You feel like you're fighting an epic battle against a villain, trying to worry about their different schemes. It feels like you're playing out a movie when you play this game.
Well, so let me take issue with that.
Ooh.
Yes, I agree with you. I do agree with you. It is incredibly thematic, and you are creating the theme and you are creating the moments yourself, which I think is solid in and of itself. Like, if a game can do that, where you are creating the story in your head, that's always solid. That's always a plus. However, I do feel that it lacks a bit in the way that Arkham Horror was able to do it. Arkham Horror, I thought, created a great narrative hook, and you're still supplying some of your own, you're filling in the details, but I really liked how strong the narrative was in Arkham Horror. And I don't think that the inbuilt narrative is there as much. And I also don't think there's as much interesting scenarios. And maybe that'll change because, when I look back at the core set of Arkham Horror, they were all pretty straightforward scenarios. And I'm hoping that this is the same way, where this is just kind of whetting your appetite, and they'll have very varied scenarios in future expansions. That's what I'm hoping. And I'm hoping that the narrative hook is stronger, but I agree with you that you're adding your own quite a bit.
Yeah. Guild had a bunch of thoughts on this one. We'll start with Sylvain Lacroix. He says, I played a dozen times with various player counts. I'll start with a warning. This is a 1 to 2 player game, 3 at most. Do not play this at 4. This game was made to be played with fewer players because even at 3, the game drags a lot. I really enjoy this game solo, and it takes, he said, kind of similar to what you said, Sean, 20 to 25 minutes to play.
Yeah.
Deck construction reminds me of my good old days with Magic the Gathering, and I love that you must adjust your deck to face the villain. When you start tinkering with deck construction, the game becomes even better. In the end, I really enjoy this game. I give it a high 5, and with more content on its way, it might come up to a 6. Who knows? So he is stoked about this. The rest of the guild, maybe not as much.
Yeah, so BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, this is a game I would have loved in the mid-90s when I dove headlong into Magic. Building decks, chatting strategy, trading a Black Lotus for an aspect of the wolf, yeah, I know. Today, I'm just not as fascinated by deck building anymore, outside of the gameplay, I mean. So I'm 3 plays in on Marvel Champions, 2 against Rhino, 1 against Claw, and I'm recognizing a few things. Mechanically, the game is sound. The rulebook needs work, lots of edge cases according to my buddies, and not FFG's best work. Thematically, the decks play as expected. The game is crying out for some kind of real storyline, not just one sentence on the top of the enemy card. I love playing Spidey with protection. I love the artwork, and the flipping mechanic on your hero alter ego is one of the coolest mechanics I've seen in a card game. Kudos. I realize the worth of this game. I totally get why people enjoy it. Yes, I admit that I have fun playing with my buddies and feel real satisfaction when I pull off a clever combo that uses my entire hand, gives 4 points of health to Peter Parker, wipes out some threat, and smashes the bad guy for 12 points. But my game tastes have evolved since the 90s, and this one is sadly not for me. It is a big hit in our group, so I'm very likely to keep playing as the game expands. Who knows, maybe by the time of the Duke's Double Take, my mind will change. But sadly, Marvel Champions is a 3 on the Ducal scale. The game is okay, not particularly exciting, and I will play it in the right situation, but for now, I'm not ready to pick it up for myself.
Brett Mowers says, the game has been high on my list to pick up, but after playing, it gave me pause. BJ mentioned there were many rules questions that came up, and between the learn to play and rules reference, we still couldn't get the answer, or fell into the Fantasy Flight cycle, where this rule, as you reference this rule, and then this rule, and on and on and on, before realizing there just is no good answer. I do think the game is very interesting and probably has some cool content coming. I need to play it a few more times before making a final call, but I would probably give it a high 3 based on one play. And it's interesting. BJ's list of things is I mostly agree with, except that I like the organic story that gets generated, the moments that come out of this. We were doing this, we had just beaten, it looked like we were about to win, and then all of a sudden the vulture showed up and stole all of our stuff. There's the organic storytelling that can come out of those moments in this game, I think is really cool and lends itself to some memorable moments. Things that I don't think you need to have that expanded backstory. I actually disagree with you on that front. I don't think they necessarily need to bring interesting scenarios into the fold here to have interesting theme and interesting narrative that comes out of it. But I can also see why some of the more hardcore comic book fans might want to see more of a story get told. That's oftentimes why people come to something like Marvel anyway. So yeah, Sean, we're through this. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So we rate things here, and you've heard some references to how they would rate the game over on the Guild. Rate things on a 6-point scale. A 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. A 6 is an all-time favorite that is a contender for the top 10. And for me, this is not going to be a 6. We kind of discussed it during the week, Alex, and you assumed I would give it a 5. And I said, yeah, it's probably going to be a 5. I could see where it might be a 4. 4 is a good game worth playing just all the time, belongs in the Duchy. 5 is a great game, will rarely turn down a play of it. And looking at this game over time, I question to what extent am I going to want to keep coming back to this game? Because I look at Lord of the Rings, and I look at Arkham Horror, and they are games that I played a bunch, that I kept, well, in the case of Arkham Horror, I kept up initially with the um, expansions, but then I kind of fell off collecting those because I wasn't really continuing to play the game. I was less likely to play it with other people because there's plenty of other games that we're playing with other people, and I wasn't playing solo as much. What I will say is that because this is streamlined, and I said at the very beginning that I wasn't necessarily looking for a streamlined version of Lord of the Rings or Arkham Horror, but because this is streamlined, because I could set this up so much quicker, because it doesn't have, as of yet, any more complex scenarios, I think I am more likely to play this solo. The thought of going back and playing Arkham Horror right now, set aside the fact that there would be some overhead in having to kind of relearn the game, but each of the scenarios, there's a lot more of an intricate setup than there is with Marvel Champions. Now, I will say this. I have gone back and started looking at some Arkham Horror stuff and Lord of the Rings stuff, and this kind of piqued my interest in revisiting those games, which is cool. It's cool that it's doing that. So I think that there's a good chance that once Captain America comes out, once some of the new scenarios, there's also Miss Marvel deck is coming out. I think that there's a good chance that I will continue to play this in the next year. I think we'll see it the double take. I'm going to give this a 5 for now. A great game will rarely turn down a play of it. But if this has kind of fallen by the wayside, like a lot of the LCGs have, just because I can't devote the time to doing that as well as work and family and podcasts, well, I don't know. But for now, 5, a great game will rarely turn down a play of it.
All right. I never expected to be higher on this one than you, and I'm not. As we talked through this has a lot more for Sean than it does for Alex, right? This has the Marvel theme, something you absolutely love. It has deck construction at its core, but there's enough here for me to really like too. And ultimately, because of how thematic it is, the brilliance of that hero alter ego system, how well it plays, how fun it feels, I'm ultimately going to give this one a 4. A good game, worth playing, just not all the time. Belongs in the Duchy. And I don't know if I'll pick up any of the expansion content, but I'm perfectly satisfied with what I have in there now. If I can somehow convince Abby to try this and she might like it, then that could boost it up that much more. I think it's unlikely, just knowing her game taste, but yeah, you never know. But just a 4. It's higher than I would have expected coming into the review, and I think higher than you would have expected me to be coming into this review. So,
let me ask you this real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Do you intend to sleeve the cards?
No.
Ooh. All right.
Should I?
Well, I mean, if you don't want to be a savage.
I mean, I'm consistently a savage, I guess.
Do you anticipate, if you're going to play this again, and I would assume so if it's a 4, do you anticipate playing this solo or with people?
I anticipate trying it solo.
Okay.
Just the fact that it sounds like it's a short pickup and go time. I already have the claw deck set up in there, and it would be easy enough to put together another deck pretty quickly. I think if I had dividers in the box, it would encourage me to play a lot more frequently, just because it's just hard to find stuff in there right now, just because of how completely disheveled and disorganized I am. That's not really the game's fault. That's just kind of a me thing.
Sure. And let me point out too that my solo plays have always been one-handed.
Mm-hmm.
I do intend to try some two-handed solo plays.
My favorite plays of Sentinels when I would play on the app would be four players versus one villain. Not anyone else joining. Like, I play all 4 characters, so 4-handed. Right. But yeah, that's I anticipate I will try and play in both situations. I anticipate trying it solo, and I anticipate at some point maybe trying it with Abby. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. There's only so much room in there for for me to throw new stuff at her, especially stuff where it's dicey at best that she's going to like it. So we'll see. So in any case, that's our review of Marvel Champions. Sean coming in at a 5 for now, and I'm coming in with this one with a 4. No double take this week, so we only have one little bit of unfinished business, which is talking about the rest of the best, or best of the rest, whichever one. Matt Walker and the Name Father, kind of a tag team effort on this one. Matt Walker initially suggested Excelsior, and the Name Father jumped in with what was a strong contender for this week, Excelsior. So
Stan Lee's little
catchphrase,
catchphrase.
Yeah.
Excelsior, true believers. And then Randy Bieri suggested Dukes Assemble, which was a strong contender for me. And you said, "Oh, I'm going to veto that." And I was just like, "Are you for real?" And let me tell you why, Alex. Let me tell you why. Man, okay, slight spoiler for Avengers Endgame. And if so, like, if you want to see it and you haven't, what's wrong with you? If you don't want to see it and you haven't seen it, that's fine, whatever. But 10 years of movie making, 23 movies, when everyone's on the field there at the end and Cap says, "Avengers Assemble," man, there is something in my eye and I can't get rid of it, because holy cow, it is incredible. It is such a huge payoff. So I like Dukes Assemble.
It was all right. Jimmy
You're
DM90 came with "We Are the Champions," referencing the Queen song, which I did not sing very well.
No, that was pretty bad.
It was pretty rough.
I'll usually give you props, but that was
Usually I can at least sort of sing. That one was boy, I wasn't sure whether to go high or low, and it just didn't work out great. But I'm not going to try it again. Look, Sean, you got to live moving forward. You can't live in the past.
Let's be fair. Freddie Mercury is a tough act to emulate.
Look, sometimes you get a job at a game company that you want to work for, and sometimes you finish second place, and you just got to move on, and you can't hold on to that.
Oh, so you're second place to Freddie Mercury. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, but that's, hey, if I was second place to Freddie Mercury, that wouldn't be bad at all. Anyway, I'm not, though.
And then Severin Heiberg suggested "I Got Nothing for You, Cap." Do you know what that reference is? You know where that's from?
I don't. I'm assuming it's one of the movies.
Well, yeah, it's from Endgame. It's what Tony says to
which I have
Captain
seen.
America. Which, again, slight spoiler after Tony gets rescued from space.
Yeah.
By the way, again, if you haven't seen it and you would like to see it and you care about a spoiler, why haven't you seen it? It's been out since April, and it's amazing, and it's on Disney Plus, and it was on other stuff, whatever.
I Got Nothing for You, referencing the fact that this was at least initially meant to be a pretty thin episode. At least on deck, it was just posted as Marvel Champions Review.
Yeah,
that's it. And finally, BJ from Board Game Gumbo with Story Arch. It's referencing kind of a story arc that you would find in the comics, and referencing a possible and turns out actual appearance by Abby, my girlfriend, referencing the Gateway Arch here in St. Louis. Because you got a little extra taste of St. Louis this week. So,
yeah.
There you go.
Thank you, Guild. We appreciate all the effort. But that's going to do it. So we'll wrap this up. This has been episode 213, Decklist of Champions. Thanks again to Matthew S. for that awesome title. Until next time, this is Sean.
And also Alex.
And Duke Excelsior, everyone. I'm proud of that. Duke Excelsior.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on November 16th, 2019. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out dicetowernetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to dukesofdice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. And find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Arcane Wonders and Game Toppers, LLC. You can learn more about Arcane Wonders' fine titles at arcanewonders.com and find out all you need to know about Game Toppers at gametoppersllc.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on.